Good morning, everybody. Grazie, Alessandro. Thank you. And thanks to all the hosts that have introduced this fantastic adventure that the Polimi Design System has engaged with this 24-hour design challenge. It's my pleasure, actually, to be the first host to have the first talk with a guest. In this half an hour, I'm going to have a very pleasant conversation with my dear colleague, Philipp Heidkamp. Hello, Philipp. Nice to see
Marzia.
you.
Good to see you. Good morning.
Good to see you too. Good morning. With Philipp, we have been colleagues. We've known each other for a long time because we're both involved in the adventure of MEDES, the Master of European Design, where both our schools are partners. And today, in this half an hour that we will share together, we will engage in this reflection on the role of design as we enter this new transition towards what we are calling the new normal, the so-called new normal after the lockdown caused by the COVID-19. And Philipp, as all the other guests, you have also chosen a word that I find very interesting. It's a fantastic keyword, I think, also to begin this very long line of conversations that we will have today and tonight. This word is trust. So maybe we can begin this half an hour with your reflection on this word. And maybe you could begin by telling us, sharing with us your reflections on this word and how you're connecting trust and design, especially in this period.
Yes, thank you, Marzia, for this introduction. I'm very pleased to start this marathon right now together with you, this 24 hours conversation as a sort of new modality of conference. I like this idea very much. But let's start with trust. When I've been asked to come up with a word with a suggestion, this was the first word that came into my mind. And because in Germany, I think we have a saying that says control is better than trust. I think that's pretty much a paradigm that goes along with precision, with engineering, with predictability. So with a lot of issues that were very important in former times, but in the last decades, I think there has been a change. And especially now in this very important moment that I also see as a historic moment in time, on our sort of transition to this new normal that might last for quite a while, I think trust as an opposite to control is really important. As designers, we used to control situations, we used to control forms, we used to control processes. So we try to put stuff in boxes, in shapes, we try to define rules, we try to define patterns as a next step. But with a growing sort of complexity, with a growing volatility, with a growing ambiguity, with a growing uncertainty, to name the four big dimensions of this VUCA phenomena, I think we are pretty much on a way to see that we are not able to control things anymore by adding more infrastructure, more precise infrastructure. If you look at sort of global developments, for example, in the urban context, in mega cities all over the world, everybody's talking about smart cities that try to sort of control in a very efficient way the flow of resources, transportations, energy, controlling citizens, and so on. But on the other hand, there are more and more people, and I just listened to a keynote of Norman Foster to say we can only face this with a new idea of less infrastructure. So this goes along with trust. So, and you said, so what should we trust in, actually? I think we can trust, for example, to open the conversation with you a bit, we can trust, first of all, in the domain of design, there's a new need of trust in terms of participation and co-creation, actually, because many processes, especially on a global scale, can only be approached by co-creation, by participation, by sort of engaging with different people, with different disciplines, with different cultures. So the question is, why should they trust us, designers? Sort of maybe facilitating this conversations actually to change right now. So I think we have to first build the trust, and everybody's talking about trust right now. Everybody wants to have trust, but if trust is a bit more complicated right now.
Yes, it's very interesting what you propose as a reflection, and I think that in this conversation there are many levels of complexities. Complexity that relates to the emotion expectations of people, to our habits, and not least the many challenges that we're facing to go back to a normality and even to do our daily activities. Trust, for example, is very important in our daily life. For example, we hear increasingly the fact that people trust less and less the infrastructures and the social infrastructures that we've created throughout our civilization, the history of our civilization. And one of these is, for example, politics. I was recently reading a research developed by the OECD, where they were saying that politics is one of the things in which the trust of people has decreased dramatically in the last couple of years. So what type of reflections do you have on this? How do you think we as designers can have a different role maybe compared to the past, as you were correctly opposing trust and control and the idea of an old type of design that was aimed at controlling forms, shapes, use, and so on. Rather, maybe we should talk about a shared responsibility for what designers do together with the users, so whatever they are. What do you think about this?
I would prefer even to talk about sort of humans or human beings, but because thinking of sort of citizens in the city, it's really hard to me to talk about users. So I think there has also been this transition from user-centered to human-centered design, including societies. But to come back to your argument, and I think that's super important, the study actually that I know as well, of course. But I think something has changed in the last half years. I think in some governments, the trust has decreased, and in some governments, the trust has increased. Maybe in the way sort of they are handling the crisis. And because I think we should right now, and as I understood, sort of this whole marathon also is to be seen under the aspect of this crisis, of this sort of new normality, of this phase of transition right now. So let's talk about the trust in governments right now, for example. So why should we trust the government? I think what the crisis shows right now, that it makes very abstract conversations that we had in previous years very concrete and brings it into reality. So for example, let's talk about privacy or artificial intelligence. Yeah, it's super abstract, and it was very hard for normal citizens to follow discussions or debates or arguments or decisions that has been made by governments or by organizations, because it's really hard for them sometimes to understand what does it mean for them. But right now, things are sort of just in front of our doors all over the world. So this is what connects us, and this is what also allows us to compare and to see how governments are acting in a different way, but also how cultures are acting in a different way. So right now we can very concretely, for example, discuss the question or the issue of privacy compared to the question, for example, of saving lives. Yeah, I mean, we just in Germany we had a very long discussion about a COVID-19 app. Yeah, and this is also a design issue. Yeah, because how do you engage with your citizens? How do you give responsibility to the people? And we see it in a different way. So Sweden does it in its way, Korea does it exactly the opposite way, or China. I think this sort of here and here we had a very long debate about keeping privacy for the sake of saving lives that might be affected if we want to keep our privacy. And I think the way we are having this discussion, the way we can engage with a citizen in our country, this is something that is able to build trust. But I think in the opening session right now, one of the terms was sort of progetto on the one hand and collaboration on the other hand. So how do we, and also to a project in design, to me, there's a certain openness. And if we are sort of co-creating and working with citizens in projects, to me, it's important that we keep the process open. Because very often in the last 10, 15 years, when it was about engaging with citizens, the outcome was defined and we were just looking for contributions to give them the feeling to participate. What might lead to a mistrust or a lack of trust in this process, and also a decreasing will to this type of collaboration, actually. So I think to really dare to say that we do not know the outcome, that we do need to source different perspectives, that the different perspectives are counting. So that's super important. And I think the moment and the momentum is excellent right now, because there's a very, very increased interest in science, looking at the pandemics and the epidemiology. It became super popular in a very different way than in a climate crisis. And the people are appreciating if a scientist gets in front of a mic and says, I do not know. This is what I know today, but it might change by tomorrow. And here, I think we are again in the role of design to sort of question things, to not assume to know the solution, but to work together in the best way to frame the question and understand this iterative process as a process, an open-ended inquiry, actually, and not a search of unalterable objective truth, actually. And this is, I think, where design has been in the last years and where we right now could be able to contribute.
Yes, that's great. I think that this reflection also calls in very strongly the fact that the challenges that are in front of designers are evolving. And this is another big topic, a big debate that we are seeing in many different areas of design approaches, where we are discussing a lot about transitions, and we are discussing about different challenges in many different layers and levels that we deal with in this sort of open approach that you are correctly pointing at, which I would say it's a sort of also sharing responsibility with the humans that we design with, not for anymore, as you're saying, to overcome this sort of black box effect. So this idea that design is now able to deal with many different types of challenges that are much greater than in the past is one of the hot topics right now in the literature and in the practice as well. For example, scholars are proposing 4 types of challenges that design is dealing with in the 21st century and beyond. And these are namely performance challenges, contextual challenges, systemic challenges, and global challenges. So how do you think can we trust designers to be able to deal with all these different layers in designing, projecting the artificial, as someone said a long time ago?
I think those are 4 excellent keywords, and as you said, and if you just look, for example, at the global challenges, and if you look at the academic discourse, actually, and the definitions by Norman or Friedman, if I look at the global challenges, talking about a sort of profound understanding, actually, of cultures and needs in a sort of very sort of big setting. And research that needs to be conducted by anthropologists and design researchers. So I think here it's a profound understanding that we need to get. So this means what I said. I mean, it's an inquiry and a search of an unalterable objective truth that we're not having. It's an open-ended inquiry. So here it's really about a profound understanding. So that we say that there's a lot of things that we do not know, and we accept that we bring together different perspectives. If you look in the sort of contextual challenges, I think there it's less about the profound understanding there it's maybe more about I noted down, maybe like a acceptance, actually. Yeah, it's an acceptance, so that we have to accept that there are sort of different disciplines that can contribute knowledge, and obviously each discipline assumes to be the leading disciplines and knows it very well. So the role of the designer is pretty much to sort of accept and try to manage those different stakeholders in a way that they sort of accept that other perspectives are also very valuable in finding solutions. If you are sort of on the level of the systemic challenges, then it's more like an orchestration, more or less, maybe, of the different sort of professions that are coming together and the disciplines. And if you are in the more or less traditional level of the performance challenges, then I think it's the transformation that is embedded in the, I'm not so fine with the term human-centered design, and it's embedded, it's enlarged to a society, actually. So that's this sort of transformation that came from the user or user-centered design right now to design around the societies, actually, and to improve these performances. So what we're facing right now are for sure global challenges. So what we need is a sort of really profound understanding that we as designers have to try to sort of bring together through envisioning things, for example, through listening, through bringing together, and I think through sharing the attitude that we had and have in design for quite a while.
So how do you see the evolution? At the beginning, you gave this word control as opposite of trust. Mm-hmm. And you said that this was in the past, especially in the great tradition that design has in Germany and that we all know. How do you see this word evolving? How do you see the evolution of the word control? If you had to say that there is an opposite to trust today, would you say that there is one or there is none?
Well, I think there is an opposite, and I think if you want to control something, you cannot, for example, you cannot say that you are vulnerable, because you need to be sort of strong, because the people accept that you are defining the rules and that the things are under control. You cannot negotiate. I mean, a pilot in an airplane cannot negotiate with 360 passengers how to sort of control the airplane right now. But if it's about sourcing different perspectives from cultures, from humans, then it's super important to make clear that you are open, that you sort of cannot control, and that you are also maybe that you might have been wrong in a process. So that's what I think. That's super important to have an open outcome of an inquiry. And what I see in the last years emerging is an increasing trust, and especially in the last half year in the design community, actually to share practices right now, even if there's a competition sometimes, but to share practices and ideas to face and to cope the global challenges. So, and it's super hard to predict. We're all doing scenarios, how things might emerge, but we know we cannot control. We know we cannot predict. We can speculate, and speculation is also a power of design, to envision speculations in a way that they become accessible for other people, that they can evaluate them, that they can contribute. And I think those speculations, I would like to see more utopian than dystopian in the near future, because my feeling is that the majority of the speculations in speculative design was, for example, to warn about the negative impact of technology right now. But right now, maybe let's sort of come up with more utopian speculations where design can contribute. This might help also to increase the trust of the people, because they have to bring trust in this process.
Yeah. So do you think that, going back to my question, that today the motto, let's say, should be, rather than trust and control, should be trust and share, or trust and open, or trust and accept, or trust and speculate, something like this?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it doesn't make sense to come up with the opposition of trust and control. I think this is just how the word emerged, and I think there are some sort of strong drivers why the word trust is emerging. Another word is also transparency, for example, because everybody was asking for transparency. But we all know right now, especially if you look at big data, data visualization and information design, that transparency can be really a horror, because everything is transparent. If you ask right now, what does sort of Google or Facebook knows about me, then you get gigabytes of data, so it's super transparent, but it's not accessible, so you cannot trust. I mean, you trust that they will share it with you, but it's not accessible. I think it's the way we share. So there's no real sharing from two sides without trust. So I think the pair of sharing and trust is an excellent pair. And maybe also a bit sort of to rethink sort of what transparency means, because as I said, we've been asking for transparency for at least for the last 10 years. But transparency needs to be in a way, especially if you talk to the citizens, that they can make informed decisions based on the information that they get. And a lot of the transparency is just like, okay, it's from the sender perspective, not from the receiver perspective. Okay, we share everything. This is like sharing information without taking into consideration how the other part of sharing, it's always at least two perspectives, can deal with what you share right now. And I think maybe it's maybe trust can boost the potential of sharing. And going back to the four challenges that you mentioned, I think this only works, that's super clear, in sharing and in participating and in asking people to participate and to contribute.
Okay, that's quite good. That's quite interesting. So we have the last couple of minutes, last 5-6 minutes. Maybe we could use this time for a final reflection about the future of this idea that you have launched, that is a sort of, if we can call it, design for trust. So reflecting on what could be a tentative agenda for the future. So I've written down a lot of keywords while you were speaking that stem out of this reflection on trust. And I have a lot of positive keywords: openness, acceptance, sharing, transparency, access. These are very positive keywords, as you were mentioning, positive speculation, rather than dystopian scenarios for our future. And so how can we launch a sort of agenda for developing this idea of design for trust, maybe even throughout the marathon, if any other speaker will pick up on this?
Well, design for trust is a really big term, and I would go sort of one step back and say, I think first, as the designers, we have to trust, and I think that's super important. We have also to trust the people we are designing with, and I think trust means listening, means sort of listening between the lines. And we very often talk about, if you talk about diversity, let's embrace diversity, but really be really sort of vulnerable and sort of really try to trust the people you're working with. I mean, that's easy said. That's super easy said. And I think I trust is always a giving and taking. Yeah. And I believe very much in this, and I think that there are sort of opportunities emerging when we sort of give this this booster in collaboration. So, for example, to mention another person, Ezio Manzini was talking about social innovation and creative communities. Yeah, I mean, how to unlock the creativity in communities. This works because you trust that the individual can make a very important and meaningful contribution. And I think it's a mindset, it's an attitude. Maybe it's a humbleness actually that we need to have in design. And to balance this between, on the one hand, orchestrating and leading processes, but on the other hand, to say, okay, we try to overcome hierarchies, and what you say is super important to me. I try to listen precisely, or I try to understand precisely. To me, this might be a step that we can explore and that we can easily explore in academy, in projects that we are running across schools or across partners. So to try out if we really embrace diversity across cultures, across nations, and across perspectives.
Okay. So we could say that the central pillar of this idea of design for trust would be the people, of course, and the way we design with the people and for the people in a positive relationship of collaboration, active listening, we could mention even, and shared responsibility. So that our design becomes, at all the different levels that we were mentioning, more inclusive and more more creative in a very broad sense. Mm-hmm. In all the 4 different levels that we mentioned before, the performance, the contextual, the systemic, and the global at the same time. Because wherever we are, we could say we need to design for trust as a mindset, as you were saying, because we are always with the people.
Yes, let me sort of get back in the last 2 minutes maybe on active listening. And I think we have the tools to sort of unlock, as I said, how to unlock this creativity, how to unlock the positions. And I think here we can come up with a lot of powerful tools and methodologies that we have in design, that we have in co-creation, that we have in participatory processes. Yeah, to let people draw things, to do interventions, actually, to not just listen to what they say, to give them the opportunity to express and to unlock the knowledge and the contributions that we need to have. And this might be super interesting to develop a toolbox for listening that goes beyond the methodology that we borrowed, for example, and further developed from sociology, to develop a very design-specific toolbox of listening and establishing a new form of dialogue with the people and co-creating. And I think this can and will define the role of designers as well in this process.
Okay, thank you, Philipp. I think that this has been a great conversation. I hope that anyone that was listening found it interesting, and that our reflections sparked some little lights or little bulbs, light bulbs in the head of designers and maybe even non-designers that were listening. Thank you for sharing with us your reflection. It's been a pleasure for me to have this talk with you.
Thank you, Marzia. It was a pleasure for me, and congratulations, Polimi, to sort of kick this very important session off. And I'm keen on and seeing the other colleagues in the lineup right now. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye, Philipp.